Okay, y buenos dias. So this week we are in chapter 3 in the third grammar point, which is the present tense of ER and IR verbs. Now, in lesson 2, we learned about regular AR verbs and how to conjugate those. And when I say conjugate, that is to change the endings on the infinitives. So here is an infinitive, trabajar. It means to work. So infinitive just means it has no subject. And it usually it does start with the word to. So to work, to walk, to sleep, to run. No subjects. And so when we conjugate the verb, that means we're changing the ending so that it agrees with the subject. So here is just to review quickly before we learn the new verbs, ER and IR verbs. Here's a review of your AR verbs. So trabajar is to work. And so what do we do with that? Well, we have our subject pronouns. I've listed them here. So yo and tú, and then él, ella, and usted will all have the same verb conjugation. We've got nosotros, and then we've got ellos, ellas, and ustedes. And so what you will do is drop off this AR ending and add an O for the yo form. So yo trabajo is how you say I work. Sometimes I still see people saying yo trabajar, but yo trabajar means I to work. We don't want I to work, we want I work. So yo trabajo. You work is tú trabajas. He works. Notice in English how we've changed the ending on that verb. So it was I work, you work, but he works. That's conjugating. So the él, ella, usted form of an AR verb is going to end with an A. For example, trabaja. And then nosotros trabajamos, we work. Ellos, ellas, and ustedes trabajan. So the endings for an AR verb, o, as, a, amos, an. Let's look at ER and IR verbs now. So comer is to eat, and it ends with ER. And so here are your subject pronouns. Remember that we do not concern ourselves with the vosotros because it is used in Spain. So we'll just cross that out for right now. And what we'll do here is we knock off the ER again because comer means to eat. And so to say I eat, it's yo como. Tú comes. Él, ella, and usted come. Nosotros comemos. Ustedes, ellos, ellas comen. So the endings for ER verbs, o, es, hemos, en. IR verbs, escribir means to write, and so the endings for IR verbs, escribo, escribes, escribe, escribimos, escriben. So for IR verbs, your endings are o, es, imos, en. Look at how similar ER verbs and IR verbs look. Just take a look at that. O, es, hemos, but then imos, little different there, but then en. So the only form that is going to have differences is the nosotros form. And even that's kind of easy to recall because for ER verbs, it'll end with EMOS, and for IR verbs, it'll end with IMOS. ER and IR verbs have very similar endings. You can detect patterns that make it easier for you to use them to communicate in Spanish. So like AR verbs, the yo forms of ER and IR verbs end in O. So that's the same across the board. In all types of verbs, whether AR, ER, or IR verbs, the yo form is going to end with an O. Except for the yo form, all of the verb endings for ER verbs begin with E. So this is just ER verbs we're talking about. Okay, and we're not including the yo form because we just said that ends with an O. but we're just looking at patterns here, how to help you remember. Here's the tú form, here's the él, ella, usted form, here's the nosotros form, here's the ellos, ellas, and ustedes form. ER and IR verbs have the exact same endings, except in the nosotros. So, nosotros comemos, but nosotros escribimos. We already talked about that. Here is your list of common ER and IR verbs. This is not the complete list of existence of ER and IR verbs, but these are the ones that you are going to be responsible for. So aprender is to learn. And then if you want to specify what you're learning, like what you're learning to do with an infinitive, like learning to speak Spanish, aprender a hablar español. So aprender plus a plus an infinitive means to learn to do something. Beber, comer, comprender, correr. Creer or creer en is to believe in. Deber plus an infinitive. Deber means should. Like I should. I should study. Debo estudiar. And then leer is to read. Common IR verbs. Abrir. Asistir means to attend. If you're specifying what you're attending, then you'd put a. Asisto a la clase de español. I'm attending Spanish class. Compartir. Decidir. With an infinitive, it tells you what you're deciding. So, decido estudiar. I decide to study. Describir, escribir, recibir, and then vivir. Ellos corren en el parque. Él escribe una carta. Again, notice the endings here. So, original verb, correr, but ellos corren. Original verb, escribir, but él escribe. Let's do some quick practice. For the sake of saving time as I'm recording, you just follow along and watch what I do. Tú corres. Yo corro. Sara y Ana corren. Usted corre. Can't see 7, so we're just going to skip it. La gente corre. La gente means people, and that's often confusing. We think, oh, people, that's plural, so it should be la gente corren. But it's a singular word. La gente is a collective singular. It's the people. That word itself is singular. So we're going to use the singular conjugation as well. Marcos y yo corremos. For the verb abrir, to open. So ellos abren la puerta. They open the door. Carolina opens the suitcase. Abre. Yo blank las ventanas. I open the windows. Abro. We open the books. Nosotras abrimos. Remember, it's an IR verb, so the nosotros is going to end with IMOS. Usted blank el cuaderno. You open the notebook. Whoops. Abre. And then tú abres la ventana. You open the window. Ustedes abren las maletas. Y'all open the suitcases. Los muchachos abren los cuadernos. The kids open the notebooks. And one more page just to practice to learn. Aprender is to learn. So, él aprende español. He learns Spanish, or he is learning Spanish. Maribel y yo aprendemos inglés. So again, it's an ER verb, so the nosotros form is EMOS. Tú aprendes japonés. You are learning Japanese. Tú y tu hermanastra aprenden francés. Mi hijo aprende chino. My son is learning Chinese. Usted aprende inglés. You learn English. And then nosotros aprendemos italiano. We learn Italian. There you go. Get to work. Practice those ER and IR verb endings. Adios.